Like so many of you watching, I was raised by my mom to be a gentleman, to always hold the door open, to buy flowers for girls, to always pay for the meal, to always carry their bag. And so during parts of my life in school, I got treated very poorly by the same girls who I did everything for. I always got stepped on. You can imagine that this way of doing things really didn't work out that well. The thing is, girls always liked me, or at least they thought I was a really nice guy. But for a part of my life, I was the guy who was holding the bag while girls skipped over me for the guys who did none of those things for them. I'm sure all of you watching have been there at some point in your life. Thinking back, I think we all knew that something was really off. Something that our moms, our sisters, or other females in our life when we were younger taught us. Something about what they taught us was fundamentally wrong. Because the way that we were taught to treat girls wasn't working, or at least not in the way that we thought it would. Imagine some guys out there who go almost their entire life, and then later they find out that everything that they thought they knew about girls and about attraction was totally wrong. So many guys out there, including myself, end up learning this lesson the hard way when their girlfriend leaves them or cheats on them, and as they try to figure out where it all went wrong, they eventually end up finding the truth. When asked about their childhoods, most guys will say that they had a great childhood and that everything was perfect, but how perfect was it? At some point you have to ask yourself, how did you get this way? Or how did you get to be such a nice guy? The fundamental behavioral pattern of every nice guy is to hide their flaws while trying to become what other people want them to be, rather than what they should be. Now, although every nice guy out there is technically unique, they all grew up in similar circumstances. And these circumstances are what led them to developing a deep belief that they just aren't good enough. And at the end of the day, this is what it all comes down to. This is the literal origin story of the stereotypical nice guy. You see, I was raised by a mother who was never really there for me. And I also had several sisters who treated me very poorly. My real father was never around, and he actually died when I was really young. And the few stepdads that I did have were guys who drank heavily and were really abusive to me. I know this is starting to sound like something out of 8 Mile, but the point here is that growing up, the typical message that is constantly repeated and pounded into the head of the nice guy is that you are not good enough. And like so many of you, I grew up trying to hide my flaws and trying to be perfect all the time. Because if everyone thought I was perfect, nobody would be able to see my true struggle. And all they would be able to see is how nice I am. Now, the entire paradigm or belief system of the nice guy is nothing more than a coping mechanism. What it is a way to cope with feeling like you are not enough. So what are the types of things that nice guys do? Although there are many, I believe there are only two that are incredibly destructive for the majority of us. And these two behaviors are seeking approval and avoiding conflict. Now imagine if everything that you did in your typical daily life was either a direct or an indirect way of trying to keep things smooth and trying to avoid conflict with other people. Now keep in mind that when I say avoiding conflict, this isn't some sort of James Bond, smooth, cool type of avoiding conflict. This is more of a being absolutely petrified to rock the boat type of conflict, even if it means that people always walk all over you. The thing about nice guys is that they will avoid conflict at all costs. I actually had a period in my life, I'm sure like so many of you, where I just couldn't even look people in the eyes. I was super shy and I would avoid conflict at all costs because I believed that conflict in every form was inherently bad. And you see, when you're raised by women, you are literally soaking up their programming like a sponge. And so what you're doing is literally learning how to become a woman. So it's no wonder you have so many fatherless men who grow up acting basically like women. Guys who get punched in the face in school and who do nothing about it. Nice guys regularly get treated like doormats because they don't stand up for themselves, because the thought of any kind of conflict to them is just too scary. Now, if you look at how women behave, you would see that women actually do the same thing. Women do pretty much everything they can to avoid conflict. So when you're a man who is doing the same thing, something is really off. At a young age, something snuck in, maybe a virus, if you will. And this virus corrupted the programming that you were supposed to have. And this is what leads nice guys to avoid any and all forms of conflict. Now, the second most destructive trait of the nice guy is a little something that we all do far more often than we even realize it, and it's seeking approval. The real question is, why does he seek approval? What purpose does it actually serve? Now, there isn't a single person on the planet who does not seek some level of approval because as humans, we do need approval from other people. All of us need to feel like we are part of something, part of some tribe or some group of people. We just happen to do this in different ways. Some guys out there decide to join street gangs while others join sports teams. So you could argue that the number one most destructive trait of the nice guy is seeking the approval of others. And pretty much everything he does is meant to, in some way, gain approval from other people or to make sure that those people do not disapprove of him. And where this really causes problems for guys like this is with women. And all of this goes back to his programming. Guys like this tend to believe that they are fundamentally different than all the jerks who treat women terribly. They believe that they're fundamentally different than the guys who seek out conflict with other men. And it all goes back to the programming. The fundamental problem with the nice guy belief system, or the nice guy paradigm, is a belief that you can get everything that you want in life if you are just nice enough. If you just buy your girlfriend enough flowers and you give her enough boxes of chocolate, then she will have to give you all the love that you desire. If you're just nice enough to your boss at work, then he obviously will have to treat you better and give you the promotion that you have been looking for. I worked your typical job at a convenience store a long time ago, and I was always really nice to my boss. And then one day a kid named Matt was hired, and I knew that there was something different about Matt right after I met him, because I felt it, but I didn't really know what it was. And during our monthly company meetings, Matt would sarcastically call out the manager and the assistant manager on things that they do wrong during the meetings in front of all the employees and everybody else who was at the meeting. And after seeing him do this, I always thought to myself, wow, this guy is totally going to get fired. They're going to take him back to the store and they're going to fire him on the spot. But you know what happened? The total opposite. Matt was actually being considered for a promotion after having only been there for a few months, whereas I had been there for years and never been offered a promotion. The thing that was different about Matt was that he just wasn't really a nice guy, at least not when it was important. Matt was the type of guy who was just not afraid to rock the boat. He wasn't afraid to start conflict when it was needed, and if conflict was thrown his way, he saw it more as a challenge rather than a threat. Now, the craziest thing about the nice guy is that in his mind, he genuinely believes that he is the nicest, most honest, and the most upstanding guy in society, yet he is actually the most dishonest, the most deceptive, and the most passive person. Nice guys are people who hide their mistakes, avoid conflict, tell people what they want to hear instead of telling them what they need to hear, and most importantly, they hide their feelings. So ask yourself this, who is more dishonest? The guy who's a total troublemaker who isn't afraid to speak his mind even if it makes people mad or gets him in trouble, or the nice guy who always says only what he thinks people want to hear? So the only question left is, how do you change? If being a nice guy is nothing more than a matter of programming, how do you change the programming? Obviously, like in the Matrix, it starts with knowing the truth. But what do you do after that? What exactly can you do to change the code that was programmed into you at such a young age that you were completely powerless to stop? If we look at the two most destructive traits of the nice guy, these traits are seeking approval and avoiding conflict. Now, traditionally, these are behaviors of women, and it makes perfect sense because if you were raised primarily by women, then why wouldn't you behave like a woman? The reason these are traditionally female traits is because if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, like us, women need to survive. But women are not like men. Women achieve survival by gaining the approval of others within their tribe or group or community, and they also do it by avoiding conflict. And these specific traits have gone a long way to help women achieve their goals in this world. But more importantly, they have allowed women to survive. Now, men, on the other hand, operate differently. Men traditionally care little about what other men think of them, and men survive actually by creating conflict where conflict needs to be created instead of avoiding it. You see, it's all about breaking the programming. You have to get in there and you have to upload an entirely new program, or the old code that is in there is just simply not working. Now, if you look at 99% of nice guys and why they struggle with women, the one reason why they can't create attraction is because why? It's because they seek approval. It's because they avoid conflict. Some of the best and most powerful flirting that a man can do with a woman is quite literally creating playful conflict with her. If a woman says something to you that is absolutely ridiculous and you don't tell her how ridiculous it is, you're just being a nice guy. Breaking the code or breaking the programming of the nice guy is achieved through stopping approval-seeking behavior and through not being afraid of conflict. To begin to eliminate the nice guy within myself, I had to go to the extremes and then I had to bring it back a little. It's kind of like turning the volume up on the stereo to the loudest setting and then slowly turning it back down to the level that's right for you. Because you already know based on your past experience how low the volume can go, but to calibrate yourself or to balance the volume level, you have to now go to the other extreme and then bring it back. In other words, you have to go into the deep end of the pool, but instead of going all the way back to the start or back to the shallowest point or to the point that's not getting you the results that you want in life, You have to bring yourself back to somewhere in the middle. Somewhere where you can achieve a good balance of conflict and a good balance of approval. And the primary problem with nice guys is that they are raised and programmed exclusively by women, so as they get older, all they really know is this programming. Some guys will continue on with their nice guy programming until their girlfriend finally leaves them or cheats on them one day, and in doing so, she will inevitably bring out the savage within them. And this experience, although extremely painful, is kind of like the equivalent of throwing your mental computer off of a cliff. It doesn't really matter how you disrupt the programming or how you break the code. Some of you will have the code broken for you against your will by a girlfriend who does something really terrible to you. And some of you will probably just be sitting around someday and thinking about how awful your life is, and it is at this point that you will decide to make the change. Eliminating the nice guy in you is really nothing more than reclaiming your role as a man. It's about deleting the old code, or the virus, so to speak, that was programmed into you without your consent at such a young age by those who are closest to you. Do a few things every day to stop seeking approval, especially from women. Do a few things to stop avoiding conflict. Don't be afraid to look people in the eyes and to be the man that you never got to be. Stop being so nice to every girl that you meet. And don't be afraid to bring out your inner savage. And with that said, you guys are the best. And until next time, thanks for watching.